and we've met, I know I have a lot of patients that are depressed and anxious. And if you think about, there's a lot of times, one of the problems that manifests as is they get this real stagnancy in their life. You know, it's like they want things, but they're not sure exactly what they want. And they think they want to go make something happen, but they don't believe that they can make it happen. So, you know, you're depressed in your home when you're not going out and getting things. I can imagine, you know, maybe like a college student who's pretty depressed and doesn't have like a really big social circle and feels lonely. They might come to a psychiatrist or a mental health professional looking for help with loneliness. But the issue is that, you know, they're blocking themselves off, and they're not, like, they have desire to connect with people, right? There's a desire to go out there and have feelings and experiences, and it's getting shut down, you know? And so if they could listen to their feeling would be like, look, it doesn't matter what, you got to go out and do something that's interesting to you, you know, go out and find a place where they're playing games, or, you know, go to a show or something that's interesting to you. Depression's the opposite of going out and doing things. It's about shutting down. So like, it
is about shutting down.
It is, right? And so, but you're shutting down your feelings, and then you lose that motor, right? You lose the motor, you lose the compass, and then you don't know what you want exactly out of life, you know? So the first thing that I think ISTDP can help people learn how to do is how to actually experience the feelings that they're having in their body. Maybe I should have said that's a second, because in order to do that, you need to do the first thing, which is to stop doing the things that you're doing to block it, you know? So
stop doing the things to block your feelings.
Exactly. So we call those defenses.
Defenses are something you're doing to block your feelings.
Anything you do to try to avoid or block your feelings from having the experience of them. So those are the two things that ISTDP can do. With regard to the blocks, you know, the defenses, the ISTDP is very pointed, and the goal is to be very clear, and it's to be very real time. You know, we mentioned, you know, the past and stuff, and that will all come up, right? But what really matters about in ISTDP is what's happening right now, here in the room, between you and me, as we're talking, you know?
Okay, so a defense is something that a person is doing consciously or unconsciously,
either one,
to defend themselves against some sort of feeling, which you would imagine that feeling is threatening, distressful, painful. There's a reason that we are defending against it. So on ISTDP, this person is sitting right in front of you, and in real time, you are analyzing the way that they are defending themselves against their own feelings.
Right there. Because the person comes in with a problem, and if you ask them about the problem, naturally they're going to have feelings about the problem. Either it's an interpersonal thing, and the feelings are going to be there. Like when you call up a memory, part of reliving a memory in your mind is real. You know, you might be physically here, but the mind, when it relives the memory, it's accessing all those same neuron pathways, you know, to remember seeing something, the occipital cortex, the eye part of the brain, it lights up, right? If you remember what something looked like, to remember what something felt like, if you remember moving your hand to do something, all these corresponding parts of the brain, they light up, right? Because your brain is experiencing it as real as it can, just inside itself. So on that same level, here in the room, if I ask my patient to tell me about this argument that you had with your partner, you know, and if they were feeling anger during that argument, then that anger is going to get stirred up right there in the room. And if anger is forbidden, then also all of these defenses are going to start happening right there in the room.
Okay. So you have a patient sitting in front of you. You ask them about a conflict they had with their partner. This patient, let's call him John. John, growing up, through his life story and his attachment figures or whatever, feeling angry has been deemed unacceptable by his unconscious. So he's very out of touch with that feeling of anger. He defends against it. So you are talking to John. Tell me about this conflict you had with your wife, in which the anger did come up. And now what do you see? What is an example of a way that John is defending against this anger? So what do you do with John? And what do you see in John?
You got to watch John, right? Because it's going to happen quick, and it's going to be happening right there. And you got to be listening too. And it's easy in normal conversation, and even in therapy, to miss it because it all happens so fast. It's happening right there. So will you say, John, so what happened, you know, with with your wife? Like, what did you get into an argument about? And the first thing John says is, well, actually, she was probably right. You know, I probably went too far. Already before he's even told us anything about the argument or his feeling of anger or what was going on, the first thing that he told us right there, and that's like a very normal thing to say, right? The first thing that he did was throw himself under the bus.
Okay, you know? How a psychiatrist analyzes a patient in ISTDP. So the first thing he does is throw himself under the bus.
You go line by line, you know? So when you ask someone to talk about something that has strong feelings, and if they have conflict about that feeling, then the defense will happen right then. You know, the first thing that they say might be defensive. Because if you asked him about his anger towards his wife, he could have said, oh, well, you know, she did this and I was just furious because, you know, it felt like she was taking away my power, you know, she was blocking me and I didn't want her to do that. And so I was filled with this rage and I just wanted to, you know, lash out, right? Anger wants you to lash out, right?
Yes, and that's healthy. This person is in touch with his feelings.
That. Exactly.
He's in touch with his anger.
Because he's not, and it's healthy. He's not actually going to lash out at his wife because like once he processes the anger, then the next thing he's going to feel is like, gosh, but if I had lashed out, I'd really feel bad. I love my wife so much, you know. Yeah. I don't want to hurt her. I'm really sad that we had this argument. I want to be close to her.
Yes.
You know, I want to be together. I want us to feel like we're, you know, co-leaders. I want us to work together. You know, they'll have like a real guilty feeling, a healthy guilty feeling where he wants to come back together, and then a positive loving feeling. Yeah. You know.
Now in John,
that's the whole process.
John
didn't do that.
Can't experience anger for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You ask him, how did you feel about your wife during this conflict? He is recalling from memory and he throws himself under the bus. So that is a defense.
That's a defense. Yeah. Because we're here when we're doing therapy to figure out what his problem is, you know? And so we watch him, we see the problem, we're asking about his feelings, and he shows us what his problem is by immediately throwing himself under the bus and not accessing his feeling.
Okay, let me pause you there. So he throws himself... Now, perhaps we could explain the two types of defenses. There are formal defenses.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Formal defenses and tactical defenses. Formal defenses are when the patient defends himself from experiencing his own feelings, and tactical defenses are how he keeps you, the provider, at an emotional distance from him.
Yeah.
Now, part of your job, part of our job is recognizing both. The formal defenses, because everybody needs to be in touch with their own feelings to live a fulfilling life.
Yeah.
And also tactical defenses, because people that are putting up guards against the provider from getting in close with them emotionally are more than likely doing that in their own personal relationships. And what else is needed for a good, fulfilling, happy life is having emotionally close, intimate relationships with other people. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you are assessing for both types of defenses here. Is that right?
Yeah, you're watching. So, and when he says something like, you know, it can seem like he's trying to, you know, acknowledge that he did something wrong. So there's something positive about him acknowledging that he has a part in the relationship. But when he doesn't acknowledge what he actually feels towards his wife, you know, that's where you're going to have trouble, because he's going to be in conflict about that, you know, afterward. Yes. And but what you were saying, the defense that he was doing right there was a sort of a rationalization. You could call that a formal defense. How did it function? It certainly functioned in between him and me, you know, because I'm looking to see what is it that he was really feeling? Like, how did he experience this? You know, what was his unique way of experiencing an argument with his wife, you know? And I want to know what's the feeling that he had when it came, when he started getting into a fight with her. And I didn't learn too much about that. All I learned was that when he thinks about getting into an argument with his wife, he just wants to, you know, attack himself and say, you know, he's worthless and he makes bad decisions and he can't control himself or something like that, you know? So I didn't learn about how he interacts with his wife. I didn't learn about what he feels with her. I just learned what he, you know, I just learned what he does to stop all that from.
Yeah, he rationalizes it.
He rationalizes.
So what you learned is how he stops from experiencing the anger. Yeah.
And I didn't learn anything, and I had asked me that. So on that level, that functions as a defense between him and me, right? Because it prevents me from getting to know him.
Yes.
So it certainly functions as a defense that prevents emotional closeness with me. He didn't show me his emotions, right? He showed me a rational thought. A tactical defense we oftentimes think of as things that they do in the moment to try to avoid quickly. So you could classify that as a tactical defense if you wanted, because it did tactically, I think.
Tactfully?
Yeah, well, certainly tactful also, because that's common in
okay, well, let me pause you there, and perhaps for the YouTube audience or whoever watching, is there some utility in discussing tactical defenses so perhaps people can pick up on when others are utilizing tactical defenses to keep them at a distance? So if you notice these things, perhaps someone's trying to keep you at a distance.
Yeah.
Tactical defenses. Can you give us more on things you can spot where someone's trying to keep you away from them?
I don't think there's any harm in having that knowledge. I will say though that like if you ever to point out a defense to a person, if you point it out to someone, it always comes off as aggressive. That's another part of the intensive short-term. Because our job as therapists is, when we're doing ISTDP, is to point it out, is to, then I would tell John, hey John, so I asked you to tell me how you felt with your wife, and you told me, you gave me some rational thought about how you're not worthwhile, you made a dumb decision or something. You didn't tell me. Do you notice that you did that? Oh yeah, I guess I did that. Do you notice that you didn't tell me anything about how you felt towards your wife? Oh, well, I thought you needed it. Well, I know you thought that, but we're trying to get a sense of how you deal with things, So do you notice that you gave me a thought instead of a feeling, right? So that's very aggressive. It's pointed and it keeps him on track. Naturally, people might have some sort of a reluctance to hear that, So the audience, it's good to know about what people are doing. It can give you more awareness in the world, but also it's good to know that, these are not things that I would ever do in like normal life,
of course,
with my own partner or with family or friends, because it comes off as aggressive.
Okay, well,
let's talk about some tactical defenses. Good question, right?
Yeah, and I'd also be fascinated to know how you draw that line in your marriage. Yeah, as far as when overanalyzing your wife. I mean, I might be guilty of that in my own marriage. Yeah, but let's talk about tactical defenses, and then let's bring in after that an interesting discussion of being a psychiatrist, being married, recognize when things are happening, and of course, dealing with your own bias. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about that. But tactical defenses
very
first,
important, for my own personal. Yeah. So, but tactical defenses are things that people do to try to like blunt the feelings, like really quickly and in the immediate vicinity, And
a tactical defense has to do with another person, right?
Yeah, it's a tactical. Well, I guess you could technically do it with yourself, but when you're paying attention to them, you're paying attention in a dyad, right? Triad. So if you ask someone, how do you feel, and then like if you ask me how do I feel about this guy that cut me off, and then I go like this, traffic's just always bad in LA, and like I'm not looking at you. Right? The first and most classical of all the tactical offenses is to break eye contact when you're presenting, because you asked me about this guy that cut me off on the drive in today, and like I get a surge of rage, right? Because you get a surge of rage when someone cuts you off. You're not getting what you wanted. You wanted to go smoothly, and you had to react to his plan, So to get a surge of rage, if I'm not comfortable with that rage and I don't want you to see that rage, when you make eye contact, there's always the risk that the other person could see and experience and kind of like mirror the feeling that's inside you in that exact same moment. And that's super dangerous if you have conflict about your happy feeling, angry feeling, sad feeling. So you break eye contact.
And this is a tactical defense against emotional closeness.
It is.
If you maintain eye contact with that person, they now have more of a emotional connection to you. Yeah. And tactical defenses are to keep people at an emotional distance. Yeah. That is what tactical defenses are employed for.
With your eyes. So
that's one example.
That's one example. But the eye contact is interesting because I learned this recently, but a baby, when a baby's born, they can't see very well, right? So the first thing that they can see, they can focus about like a foot, 12 to 18 inches away from them. And so the first thing that the baby's ever going to focus on are the eyes of the caregiver, the eyes of the parent, that you're holding the baby in your arms.
Fascinating.
They look in your eyes, and that's what they're making eye contact. So the first thing I said this earlier, the child's job is to match, right? It's to bond, it's to be with the caregiver. And that's evident from the first moments of life, when the baby is first able to start looking at things. The first thing they're going to be able to resolve, the first image they're going to connect with is going to be the eyes of the caregiver.
Wow.
So eye contact is supremely important. And that's why it's one of the first things to break if you don't want someone to see you.
Wow, that baby's only job is to match and connect. Its only job is to not be abandoned by the caretaker, so it doesn't die.
Yeah, and if it feels that connection is secure when it can look in the parent's eyes and the parent can look back and they can be at ease with each other.
A little aside. So, depression.
Yeah.
Things exist in life. Human behavior exists, and things exist because at some point they have served some sort of evolutionary advantage.
Yeah.
So getting the state of major depression, here we are, hundreds of however long humans have been around, depression, the state of depression has propagated with us.
Yeah.
Does being depressed serve any sort of evolutionary advantage? Because do we agree that most things happening right now have served some advantage to be with us today, even if they might come of more of a cost than a benefit? But does being depressed serve any advantage?
You're speaking to a principle which I think is, and this is more common in like psychotherapies nowadays. Maybe back in the 40s, I don't know. I always imagine that the older psychotherapists were more like rough about this sort of thing. But you're speaking to like the part of these self-destructive things that we do.
Yeah.
And you're saying, well, why are we doing them? Was there any reason for it? And the answer, I think, I can't speak to evolution because that's not what I know. But what I do know is I've met a lot of people and I've heard a lot of their stories about where the depression is developing. And I think that the depression, or whether it's anxiety, some people, one of their set of defenses is they get really busy. That's obviously very adaptive in like modern American society. Yeah, these people tend to do well, right?
I call that the manic defense.
Yeah, that's like the manic defense.
Yeah.
Good one. Yeah, the busy defense, the productivity defense. But depression, it clearly, I think it always develops. Maybe, for any person, there could be like a predisposition. Some people, maybe there's a genetic predisposition to be more mellow, right? But if in the environment where you grow up, there's always an adaptive reason, and if you ask enough questions, saying, well, what was it like? What was happening? What's going on is maybe the person had a predisposition to sort of shut down when things go hard. But then things got really hard really quickly in their childhood, And so they went to their predisposition to shut down, and it worked in the sense that like the feelings went away and maybe the persecutor sort of faded away.
Yeah.
Or maybe like the tension went away. If you had a parent that was yelling at you because you didn't do your chores or something, and you shut down and you become very penitent and you say, oh, I'm such a bad person, like I really should. Or you think to yourself, if I had just done the chores, then none of this would have happened. This is my responsibility, rather than the parent could be parenting better. If you don't think that, right? So if you have thoughts like that, and then it works, right? The parent gets off your case. You go to your room and you just sit there, depressed for a while. Like that's successful in the sense that now you don't have to deal with the conflict inside. The parent left, right? Now there's not so much stress.
Yeah, what you're saying now, it brings an idea. So it's like what leads to a depression? It's maladaptive coping mechanisms. You would think that if what leads to depression are defenses that are maladaptive as an adult, perhaps, and these maladaptive adult defenses were once adaptive as a child when you're dealing with your attachment figures.
Yeah.
So perhaps there's a greater evolutionary advantage making it through childhood with these adaptive defenses at the time, that you make it through childhood, but then the price is that these defenses as an adult then lead to a depression. So perhaps the evolutionary payoff is that the way you learn to defend yourself as a child gets you through childhood when you're no longer dependent on the attachment figures.
Yeah.
But then the ultimate cost comes as an adult.
Yeah.
But it gets you to the age in which you can reproduce.
Can have your old children.
And then you'll I'm just coming up with this now.
No, there's another step though after that, because I'm following your thought. The next step would be that, well, oftentimes we don't just come up with these ideas all by ourselves. There may be genetic components, right? But also there's going to be a learned behavioral component. And oftentimes the depressed child, if you look to their parent, you'll find at least one parent who also has some history of depression, right?
Yeah.
And so there could be a sense of modeling that they're picking up on from them, but also when I think of a child, I think the most important, like the core driver of a child, because human children are so unable to care for themselves, right? Notoriously in the animal kingdom, we're not born walking, right? We're born completely dependent on the caregiver.
Yeah.
And so the one thing that we do intuitively and instinctively that is the most important thing, the spider spins its web, what do? We try to link up with our caregiver.
Yeah.
Right. We have as a baby, as an infant, as a small child, as a middle child, like you have to link up with your parent, If you can't get in good connection with your caregiver, if you don't feel like there's a strong bond there, then your life is literally at risk.
Literally.
And so if your parent is modeling like, look, when things get bad, when you have feelings that come up and it could cause conflict, here's what you do. You shut down, the kid will probably even hear the parents sometimes say, gosh, if I would have just, I'm so stupid. I shouldn't have done this. Or if it's someone who has like an eating problem, I shouldn't have eaten too much. I'm so lazy, yada, 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 whatever the parent says, right? You're modeling that for the kid and the kid's picking it up. The kid has to unite with you, has bond with you, has to model themselves off of you to try to be with you, to try to feel safe.
Absolutely.
Right? And so then that's another way that it might pass on.
And that's a fundamental principle of psychodynamic therapy is it so much depends on you as an infant and child, your attachment figures, what you as a child felt was deemed unacceptable by your attachment figures. Because if you acted that way or felt that way and it was unacceptable by your attachment figures, that is now a threat to your life.
A threat
because
to
if
your
they abandon
life.
you,
Yeah.
you're dead.
You're dead.
What are some other tactical defenses?
So other tactical defenses?
I'll give you an example of one I see often is galloping speech.
Yeah.
It's the person who you cannot get a word in and keeps talking and talking to not allow you a moment to ask a question or to challenge. We all know that person. Galloping speech is a common tactical defense I see when people don't want you to get in and ask any questions or challenge or give any sort of opinion. Galloping speech is one thing that I see.
Galloping speech is one thing that you're going to see. A smart one that people use is changing the subject.
Yeah. Diversification.
Sometimes it's connected with.
We see that politically a lot.
Ask
Kamala
a question.
Harris.
Don't answer the question. Just present it. I mean, it's a standard move. I think I don't know much about like political speech or anything, but my understanding is that most people, when they're trained to do interviews, they're trained to listen to a question and then to answer the question that they want to answer rather than to answer the question that was asked, right? And so people do that intuitively and instinctively, like you ask someone about like this example with John, you ask him, how did he feel towards his wife when the fight? And he tells you about himself, that's not on topic, right? If you ask me how I felt towards the guy who cut me off, then I say, if I don't talk about how I felt towards him, maybe I talk about traffic in LA it's always,
absolutely.
It's always a mess. It's always a mess. It's dismissive, right? Dismissing is another tactical defense, right? To just say, oh, it didn't matter. Actually, I had a patient the other day. That's what happened. They were in an argument with their significant other, and like as they're telling me about the argument, they say things that the other person said that bother them, and then they immediately follow it up with like, I don't give an F about that. And it's like, no one, I mean, you immediately tell me you don't care about it, but I mean, it's obviously we're here, we're talking about it. You've got some feelings. You've got galloping speech. Your foot's tapping. It's a sign of anxiety. Clearly you're experiencing something.
Absolutely. Okay. So we have some examples of tactical defenses. So intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy. So part of what makes it intense is recognizing how people are defending themselves against uncomfortable feelings. You recognize how they defend themselves from you getting close to them, and you push and you challenge, which if you push and challenge someone's defensive points, of course, that is aggressive.
Yeah. You're trying to expose them.
You're trying to expose them because you want them to get in touch with their own feelings, and you want them to recognize how they're keeping people away from them emotionally.